Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I am Ross Morasso with my guest here today, Janis Reed. She is a psychic and medium. You can find her at psychic-medium-southwest-va.com, and VA stands for Western Virginia. How you doing, Janis?
Really good, really good. I had a
Welcome
pretty
to the
good
show.
week. I hope you have too. Thank you.
Yes, I'm having a good week. You know, we were chatting a couple minutes before the show, and you just had a client who brought up kind of a provocative question
hmm
of good versus evil. You know, as a medium, you also get messages from beyond. And tell me, is there a such thing as one versus the other, or is it just is? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was a great question. Especially, I want to put a frame around the question. The gentleman has recently been released from a little bit less than 10 years in prison.
Mm,
And he is confronting a world that's a little bit different than the one he left. He went in as a kid, he's come out as an adult. He missed all that education in the middle, but so now he's out looking to make sure he does good. But what constitutes good?
mm,
And who gets to decide what's evil? Well, the young man's been sitting there thinking for a while, and he really has reclaimed his humanity. For him, sitting in a jail cell was something that turned him into something better than he was. He really has improved his sights. He's got his sights on a good life, and that's what he wants. So he asks me, how do you tell the difference? Because 10 years ago, what was good and evil is a little bit different than it is today. There are different people in political offices, they have different ideas. Now it's okay to do stuff that, he got locked up for and different things. So, how do you fit good and evil in each day? Every time we come in to a situation, we react to it. I mean, information comes to us. We breathe in, we gather information. We
mm.
exhale, we exhale emotion. We bring information in, develop a thought about it, and exhale emotion. That emotional creation is either good or evil. And that really depends on who you're talking to. It's really a societal shift. He said he thought it was kind of like religion, it just depended on who was in charge, sort of like politics, what
Mm.
was right and what was wrong. And I really couldn't argue a lot with that thought. But I've been thinking about it now for a little while because I just think that was a really juicy question. And no one's asked me that for a while. Someone has asked if I believe in evil. Well, yeah, I do. But I think it's overhyped. Evil has created this lesser thing called confusion and doubt.
Mm.
And that's where the trouble lies for me. If someone is perfectly evil, I've not met them, but I've met a lot of confused people who did good people who did bad things, but are still good people, and they're trying to figure it out. So, what is good and what is evil? It's a little like hot and cold in deep space. Either there is heat or there is not heat. There's that line of reality. You are pregnant, you are not pregnant. The sun is up or it's dark. There's some realities, good and evil. In the beginning, all things we're told were good. And the sky was good, and the ground was good, and the firmament was good, and the creations were all good, and life was good. But then something happened in the storyline where one character took a chance thinking, oh boy, I've been given this opportunity. What a glorious thing. And they took the chance. And the other person said, you weren't supposed to do that. And I think that was the first Karen, who judged somebody else for whether they're right or not.
Mm.
it just it really it comes down to that. Do we want to be a I hate I'm one of my best friends was Karen. I hate using her name, but
Well,
there's Karens
the
in the world,
the internet
and
has
she's not one
spoken.
of them.
Yes.
Mhm. When someone decides that you, and they point that little finger at you, you are the one that's not correct. In reality, they're saying, I don't think so. I don't know. I I kind of want to, protect you from killing yourself accidentally, but I want to feel like I'm strong and in command, and I can tell you what you should do, and if you do it, you'll be correct. And if you do what I tell you, you'll be good. See, I grew up
Mm,
from the deep south. I learned to be a good girl.
mm.
Boys, they got trained different. What is it? Dogs and puppy dog tails and sugar and spice. Those are all political choices of someone else. So if you're going to say good and evil for myself, I try to be a good girl. That's how I was raised. And so I try to bring out the best in other people to remind them of their ability to make good, compassionate, loving, caring, and energetic choices. It is very easy to be afraid, to not put the work in to find out the real answer.
Mm.
That's what a lot of adults do. They think, oh, well, I'm so and so years old now. I don't have to be curious. This is the way the world runs, and this is correct. This is right. This is the way it's supposed to happen. Well, okay, they said that about the Constitution of the United States too, but then, a concierge was put into the seat of leadership. And concierge, that people forget their main job is to please as many people as they can please without actually giving them anything except taking their money.
Right.
And that's who we put in charge of our Constitution of the United States of these Americas. People then want to be like everybody else. Well, this was who was in charge. It was like a free season. Everybody could be just like the concierge. Tell everybody what they want, give them nothing, and take all their money. But that's not what happens in a united group of people. Being united, that's what's kept this country strong. No matter how ridiculous we get to ourselves, when it comes against another country, we unite. In surprise, the concierge brought in whole new rhythms. He brought in new choices, ones that most of us didn't make, ones that a lot of us figured would be better than the other choice. Um, and it wasn't. We tried to believe the hype rather than what we felt was true inside of us. And that is one of the big differences between good and evil.
Mm.
Whose life are you living? Do you believe the hype from everybody else does it? My mother used to say, everybody else jumps off a cliff. You going to do that too? Be a
Right.
lemming? And so I was a lemming for a while because I wanted to defy my mother. It's not good look for me. To do what we know feels correct inside of us for the good of all concerned. That's right. For me, that's right. And it changes. If I am promoting that, I am at least, giving it my best to do good, to try to bring out the strength of other people, to remind them of their own goodness, their own abilities, their own beauty. I think that helps me fit into a category generally in the good side. I, I'm myself. But on the evil side, I have met, and I'm sure we all have, really well meaning people like our parents who said, don't do that because I told you so. And we get stuck there thinking, well, somebody told us no, so that's all that is. I was a sucker for that. I still fall for it. If somebody tells me that's the way it is, well, the first thing I do is try to figure out, well, how is that the way it is? And so I'll try that on, and whirl it around in my mouth sometimes. And while I'm doing that, sometimes people think I agree with it, but really I'm just figuring it out. I am putting time in to research the idea on my own. And I pause. One of the best things I ever taught anybody was to slap himself on the belly like it was a big pause button on the alarm clock. And just pause before you respond. Are you responding because someone lured you into adding their glory into their life? Or are you responding because it's worthwhile you're saying what you want to say?
You know what's interesting about this, if I can interject
Please
here,
do.
and you were commenting about just using an example of, as children, we are told, or society tells us even as adults. And a conversation, this point kind of came up in another conversation that I was having recently of how, as parents, we often tell our children, this is what you should do, right? My son actually asked me several months back, was so and so a good president? And my answer was, well, tell me what good means first,
Oh, you're so
right?
smart.
And because he's in college, and so he was having conversations, in his classes and with his friends about this is a good president, this is a bad president, and I always live in the gray, if for lack of a better term, and I'm for what I'm hearing from you, though, taking that a level deeper because he's over 18 now, so a young adult. But with our children, I wonder if, from what you're telling us all, I wonder if we might all be better off if, when our children ask questions or as we are guiding our children, that giving them absolutes should be something that we should use very sparingly.
Mm. There really are very few absolutes, aren't there? And we usually are able to teach our children that if we're properly, attentive to our children when they're little, they know that pretty quick. They pretty much almost come in knowing that. They come in and learn. We give them confirmation. Um, and a good parent does. They guide. They guide. What do you think that we do this for? Or, how do you feel about that? Instead of this is how it happens. As a little girl, my mother had this special pan she put the roast in every Sunday. Every Sunday, she'd cut the end off the roast, stick it in there beside the rest of the roast, and put the lid on the double boiler, on the cooker, and put it in the oven while we went to church.
Mm-hmm.
I was into my 20s before I asked her because by then I had, started to learn to cook. I'd been through home ec. I could cook a roast. But why does she always cut the end off? She said to make it fit in the pot. Had nothing to do with the flavor, how to cook it, nothing. What I expected wasn't it. It was a practical matter. Sometimes we should ask questions. Okay, Mama, but why do we do it that way? Okay, Dad, help me understand so I don't have to ask you the next time. We have to, right now, like the last 12 years, I've been telling folks we need to teach our children how to teach us. The worlds are coming too fast. You and I are becoming irrelevant just as your child grows up and this young man grows up. As we are older and older, the younger and younger think we are less relevant. And this is something that I don't care for. I think I would like to reverse that. I like seeing the old folks' homes that also entertain the toddler section from the local daycares. When the older people and the younger people can relate to each other, not because one is good and one is bad, or that one has to learn this and the other one really ought to know that. We get together so that we can share information, develop new ideas. Our young children coming up, our young children, anybody under 40, They're looking at the world. It's different than when we were children, when I was a child. I mean, truly it was. The world is millions of years old, and yet society as we know it is relatively recent. America's only 250 years old, roughly. Not like we're Greeks, or Romans, where it's thousands of years old, or Chinese, where we can't even count how old that is. Cultures change over time, and cultures decide what's good or evil, acceptable or not acceptable. We have to be able to blend with the society that we live in, but we need to be able to do it by keeping our own counsel, as it were.
Mm.
Yoda had it right. Keep your own counsel, you do. We each have our own connection to spirit. Yours and mine are very much alike, but they are very different. If I was to help you answer something, I would ask you a lot of questions like, why do you want it answered? Why do you think you don't already know the answer? Why don't you like the answer you have? Not just offer you some new information. I like working with people like that. I want to work with somebody who's conscious of what they are asking of me. I
Mm.
want to know what they think is good and what they think is evil before I open my big mouth and shove something in there. I'm Heyoka. I tend to say exactly the wrong thing. I talked to the basketball player. The first thing I told him was, don't ask me any basketball questions. It's way over my head. I don't think he's ever going to talk to me again.
You know what I like though about what you're saying is if we are trying to find, and I think as we're saying, no absolutes, but if we're looking for directions and methodologies to separate good from evil, I think that we could probably start to point to some things that are more likely to be a good, if we want to say constructive or have benefit, and then
Mm-hmm.
things that are more likely to probably lead us down the road of evil or bad. And from what I'm hearing from the way you're talking about all of this, is that, and I'll just say this for myself, what is leaning very heavily towards the good side is creating environments and supporting environments and people who are curious by nature and ask questions, especially and even and most importantly, if they're questioning current power structures.
Oh, nurture the questioner. Question authority.
If that authority is constructive and quote unquote good, then it seems like they should welcome those questions, right? To add understanding. But if they're like, that's how it is, or, oh, you're so young, or anything else that's going to shut down the conversation or
Mm-hmm.
belittle that situation, then that seems to me, most of the time anyway, obviously point to something that is unconstructive and more
Mm-hmm.
along the path of evil, if you want to say it in that terms.
Mm-hmm. See, the original story says that we were given something called free will from
Mm.
our maker. We are all made of star stuff. I suspect so is that thing we call God, something made of star stuff. We're all that. In that way, we are all cousins, from the alligators and crocodiles right down to, my some of my family members. We're all related. When we start trying to say that I'm better than you, so I know the answer that you should do, we are attempting to take the place of the creator. I'm a creator. I created, well, children and literally crap. That doesn't make me the same as the great creator. It's like you're a good secretary, but you're not the boss because there's a different kind of education involved.
Mm.
Humans, we tend to think we're in charge. We have opposable thumbs and fingers. We don't trip on a tail. We can walk upright and see in the day and the night to somewhat. So we think we're above all the other animals because we're thinking and intelligent. And that's sort of false. Promoting a false idea, I don't know that that's evil, but it's certainly not very good. We were given free will, each one of us, to decide how we would live our life and what would be the thing we would follow. Would we follow self promotion? Would we follow a trail of nurturing our surroundings? That free will, that's given to every one of us. We have it at birth. Personalities, I'm a giver or I'm a taker. Good or evil? I don't know. I take a lot of gruff from people, but I also give a lot of gruff. So I don't, who, if I'm good or evil, it would depend on who I'm talking to. My attempts at nurturing sometimes have been very wrong because I wanted to be the one to save the world.
Mm.
I don't do that anymore. That's why I don't ask questions when I do readings anymore. I just give them the answers. I don't want to get my own energies mixed up in yours. I don't want to give you advice that might not have worked for me and think it might work for you. And that's what so many people do. When we go to people like myself, intuitives, psychics, the best thing to do is say, what can you tell me? And then listen and don't argue and see, what that is. It encourages a freer exchange of information. And that's a good thing. We exchange lots of information. That's a good thing. We get to know each other more. We are better able to meld our personalities and get along with each other and build and create something off that melding. As opposed to saying, listen, let me tell you what you ought to be doing because you ain't doing it right. And unless you're telling your child that and they're less than 13 years old, you really should think about what you're saying. Children learn easy and early what's right and wrong. And then they get into that point where, but what can I get away with? We've allowed our children to just live in that headspace for too long.
Mm.
That's how we managed to bring in a concierge. What can we get away with? This guy says I can get away with that. He can get away with that. So we're going to get away with everything. Let's all vote for the guy that says he can give us everything, and gave us nothing.
I like something else that you're saying here. Like if people come to you for readings, and especially if you're dealing with skeptics, right?
Mm.
And then you're saying, you give me some information, right? So if you're dealing with information at this sort of universal cosmic level with no direction from the person that you're trying to assist, I liken it to walking into a library and going to the librarian and say, make me smarter. Right? I think every librarian would go,
Which
we're
book
not.
in here? Yeah, which book in here? Because I don't have a lot of time. Which one is the one book I can read and just that'll take care of all my answers?
Right. So to help
Hurry up.
you put a request out there to the universe, you can start to focus and zero in on some of that information that might be available to you that you could deliver to the people that you're working with. Is that a better way to have a more constructive reading?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, like if I
Maybe.
was to come to you, right? Like this is on my mind. These are things that I'm working on or that I'm concerned with. I mean, does that help you then as your things come up inside of your story methodology or as you work on your medium stuff? Or does it just show up in front of me and let's hold some hands or however you do it, and then the data can come
Kumbaya.
to you?
When I work with someone, I try to get them calm. People that are very, very excited, it's like trying to read the fuzzy screen when the TV set goes off. There's just
Mm,
too much information and none of it connects or makes sense.
mm,
I get distracted easily
okay.
by not knowing what it is they want to know. That saves my head. I'm an imaginative person, and when I get distracted, I go off on these fairy tales. And that's where a lot of times the answers are. But sometimes that also catches up with some of my imagination. That's also where that sits. So for me, rather than sell someone my fantasy distraction, I'd rather sell them what belongs to them.
Right.
So I've my relationship with spirit, My relationship is my own. That's where I use my free will. When I speak, when I connect then with spirit to help somebody, I don't ask them, what do they need from me? Because they don't need anything from me. They just need me to move my lips. I ask, how can I help them? How can I be of good service and do them no harm? How can I do that? Help me say the right words. Help me tell the right story. Feed me my lines so I can understand them and give them correctly to the person.
So we only have a couple of minutes left here, and I want to make sure I'm zeroing in on this. So when you're doing readings, and there's an organization to the universe at that level that goes way beyond how we organize our home, but you find that the forces and information that you need just sort of knows, if assuming it's a willing party out there, knows what's going on and can sense that and then can come to you and assist?
Well, pretty much we all use the same heart and soul of the same universe. Most people don't want to check into that. They don't want to look and live in that place. It's like living in a bus station. I love Grand Central. It's not for everybody. But to live in the world of spirit, to work with spirit first and people's skins later, that's different. I mean, so many people wearing skins think that God is a myth. All those gods, those are old stories that happened a long time ago. Those miracles happened. Those were just made up stories to help explain something that they didn't understand. And we off this very thing that created us. That's like blowing off your mother.
Okay.
I try to stay tied to the apron strings of Great Spirit, so that my information comes from spirit rather than the fear of what's on the planet at any given moment or who's in charge deciding what's right or wrong.
Well, Janis, we are almost out of time. So let me tell everybody here, if they want to find you, they can look you up at goddessjanis@hotmail.com. Very easy email there. And then also your website, which is psychic-medium-southwest-va.com. I'm going to say it one more time. So psychic-medium-southwest-va.com. So I really enjoy our conversations, and I never know where they're all going to go. I just know that they're always going to be really good. So I thank you again for joining us today. And as always, I welcome you back onto the show whenever you'd like to come. Thank you, Janis.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, hey, you can get me on Facebook too.
Okay.
Just look up Janis Reed.
That's REED, Janis Reed. Look her up on Facebook as well. Thank you for that.
Janis. Have a great day, Ross. I hope the rest of your day goes good.
And Janis, the same to you. And to everybody else out there, you all have a wonderful day. I am Ross Morasso. Until next time.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.